first time, we've gotten access to all of world culture. There's a couple of dangers that we're going to be facing here. One of them, I think, is misunderstanding. Inevitably, there's going to be a whole lot of points where we're not going to be able to grasp like that what Zen is. We're not going to be able to grasp what Kabbalah is. Madonna notwithstanding. Okay, so that's one of the dangers, the shallowness of a kind of internet globalization. The word psyche is Greek, psyche, and it means the soul. It's the soul. I mean, if you really go back to Heraclitus, it's not mind, it's not just logos. The logos is part of the psyche, but it's not the whole thing. So psychoanalysis is the analysis of psyche, of the soul. Well, what is spirituality? Well, one of the components of psyche is spirit. I don't want to turn theology into psychology, and I don't want to turn psychology into theology. But I do want to acknowledge that they're connected, and at the same time, keep that separation. We don't want to end up on the mountaintop waiting for the end of the world. If we take Armageddon and apocalypse literally, it's clearly a metaphor. Well, what's it a metaphor for? The death of oneself and the birth of another, seems to me. One way to interpret that. It occurred to me that there's some phrases that we use in popular speech that might be worth giving some time to. Time after time, playing for time, time out, time over, playtime, work time. Does anybody really know what time it is? Time to go, time to start, your dime, your time, keeping time. I think he instantiated that holding model of doing therapy. And I think the proof of that was his ability to tolerate seriously negative transferences. I mean, the ones in the bad object are some of those are pretty heavy. I think a lot of us would have said, there's the door. There's the door. You don't like this? Get the hell out. Here's your money back. I'm serious. I think a lot, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking as a professor instead of an analyst, but there were times when I was reading this when I said to myself, how could he sit there and take all of that? Yeah, and hold it at the same time, to hold it and to ultimately, to such an extent that the patient ends up realizing, I can't hurt this guy. This is a good object. It seemed to me that he instantiates precisely what the three of you today have been suggesting. And it exemplifies all the things that we've been saying about Jeffrey, as well as being relevant, I think, to our topic here today. I once asked him about his last name. This was a joke, but he said, well, Sein, Zeitensein, being and time. Sein is being, field, the fields of being. That's my last comment. In a world of schnorrers and gonifs, Jeffrey was a mensch. If you don't know Yiddish, look it up, schnorrer and gonif. Users and takers. In a world of users and takers, Jeffrey Seinfeld was a mensch. I knew Jeffrey initially as a neighbor in a way that I suppose Jane Jacobs and Louis Mumford would have approved of. We met in Peter Stuyvesant Park, a block away from his office. I had no idea who he was. He had no idea who I was. We started talking, he invited me to lunch, and we became friends. His office was 3 blocks from where I lived on 3rd Avenue. He discovered I was a philosophy professor. I discovered he was a social work professor at NYU and had a private practice on 15th Street. We discovered that we shared existentialism and a deep love of everyone from Ingmar Bergman to Kierkegaard to Nietzsche, which my dissertation had been on. And when he found out that I had used Freud's Mourning and Melancholia as part of my dissertation on Nietzsche's Death of God, he recommended that I meet Susan. And subsequently, a year and a half or so later, he and I did a joint seminar workshop on the topic of melancholia. And And creative uses of melancholia, I think was the title. One of the pleasures of dealing with Jeffrey and being his friend was that, as with any gifted analyst, the latent was in fact already the manifest. Yeah? I mean, a good gifted analyst already is working and seeing the latent. You don't need to. Yeah? And so you could play ping pong, intellectual, psychological, ping pong, chess, or if you prefer the metaphor of tango. It's one of the things that I found very rare. I have found relatively few people who are comfortable in moving across such a wide spectrum of topics, of issues, of different dimensions of culture. Also, that impish, mischievous smile of his is something that I will absolutely miss. It was extremely rare. In our last conversations, both in person and on the phone, a matter of weeks, probably even days before his sudden death, he and I were mapping out a workshop on the brothers Karamazov, who we had discovered we both were deeply fond of and had read many times. I was very struck by the fact, as I was thinking about what to say today about Jeffrey, that he combined some of the elements of Ivan Karamazov with the younger brother Alyosha. Ivan, you may remember, is the westernized intellectual. And if nothing else, Jeffrey was extremely smart. I think wicked smart was the term from a movie that was used. Highly educated, but with the deep compassion of Alyosha. So the image that will stick in my mind is that of this rare combination of critical thinking and of deep compassion. I'd like to put in a plug at the end for his book, The Bad Object. It's a remarkably frank, open, and humble book. He genuinely covers the literature. It's clear who he's most deeply influenced by. But what's most remarkable is that he doesn't hide his failures. You know, we tend to sweep the students and the patients that didn't work out under the rug. We kind of elide them from our consciousness and our awareness. We all are very proud of the ones that we send to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, or the ones who go on to get their PhDs or whatever. Jeffrey dealt with some of the most difficult, culturally, economically deprived people that only a social worker working in the South Bronx could possibly have understood. I understood that only because of my late wife's work as a school psychologist in the South Bronx, and I knew the children of the parents, in a sense, that Jeffrey dealt with. As I said at the beginning, in a world of schnorrs and gonifs, Jeffrey was a mensch, but I'd also like to say in a world of bad objects, Jeffrey was a good object.